Have you ever done something kind for someone without expecting anything in return and later discovered it changed your whole life? Well, this story might just remind you that miracles still exist. So don't scroll away, because what happens between a humble nurse and a lonely millionaire will touch your heart and maybe even restore your faith in humanity. It all started on a rainy morning in a small city hospital. The corridors smelled faintly of disinfectant and coffee. Nurse Lily Parker, just 26, walked briskly through the hall, her scrubs slightly wrinkled from another night shift. Her eyes were tired, but they carried something rare, a quiet warmth that could comfort anyone in pain. She wasn't just doing her job, she felt for every patient she treated. Lily had grown up in an orphanage and had always dreamed of helping people. Her own life was simple. She lived in a tiny apartment, took care of stray cats, and saved every penny to someday start a small clinic for the poor. But she never complained. To her, kindness wasn't a duty, it was a choice she made every day. That morning, as she reviewed her list of patients, one new name stood out: Ethan Cole, room 307. Age 38, status critical renal failure, urgent need of transplant. She had no idea who he was. When Lily entered the room, the man lying on the bed didn't look like a typical patient. His face was pale, but his features were strong. His eyes, deep gray, carried a silence that came from more than just illness. It was the kind of emptiness that comes when life has taken away everything that matters. "Good morning, Mr. Cole," Lily said softly, adjusting his IV line. "How are you feeling?" He didn't answer at first, he just stared at the ceiling. Then, in a hoarse voice, he murmured, "It doesn't matter anymore." Lily frowned. "What do you mean?" "I don't have anyone left, no family, no one to care if I live or die," he said flatly, turning away. Her heart sank. She'd heard hopeless words before, but something about his tone made her stay longer that morning. She sat beside him and said quietly, "You may not have anyone right now, but that doesn't mean your story over. Sometimes, the people meant to care for us just haven't arrived yet." Ethan looked at her, then really looked. For the first time in months, someone wasn't talking about money or hospitals or boardrooms. Someone was just talking to him. He didn't know that this nurse, who smiled through exhaustion, would soon give him something no one else ever had: her own life's chance. Days passed. Lily's kindness slowly melted Ethan's bitterness. He began asking about her life, why she became a nurse, why she smiled so much even when she looked exhausted. She just laughed and said, "Because hope is contagious, I'd rather spread that." But as his condition worsened, the doctors grew grim. Without a kidney donor soon, they told him, he won't make it. Ethan overheard it but didn't react. He'd lost his parents early, had no siblings, and though he was the CEO of a global company, his wealth had built him walls, not bridges. When he collapsed in his office a month ago, no one had even known where he was for 2 days. One night, Lily found him staring out the window, tears glistening in his eyes. "You're afraid, aren't you?" she asked gently. He chuckled bitterly. "I'm not afraid to die, I'm afraid I lived my whole life wrong." She didn't say anything, just took his hand. That silent moment said more than any speech could. A week later, the doctors announced they'd found a compatible donor. Ethan didn't know who it was. Anonymous, they said. The surgery was scheduled immediately. When he woke up, weak but alive, he was told the donor was stable too, but no one would reveal who had done it. He spent weeks recovering, his body healing but his mind full of questions. Who had saved him? Why? 3 months later, Ethan returned to the hospital, not as a patient but as a man with purpose. He wanted to personally thank the one who had given him a new life, but the donor had refused to reveal their identity. Then one afternoon, as he was leaving the hospital, he saw her, Lily, walking down the hallway slowly, her hand on her side, moving carefully. Something about her gait made him stop. And when she winced slightly, touching the area where a surgical scar might be, realization hit him like a storm. He walked up to her. "It was you," he whispered. Lily froze, turning around. "Mr. Cole." "Don't," he said, his voice trembling. "You gave me your kidney, didn't you?" She tried to smile, her eyes glistening. "You needed it more than I did." "Why would you do that for a stranger?" he asked, his voice breaking. Lily looked at him softly. "Because when I looked at you, I saw someone who had forgotten what hope felt like. I wanted to give you one more chance to feel it again." Ethan couldn't hold back his tears. He had spent his whole life buying everything: comfort, power, respect, but not once had he received something that pure, that selfless. From that day, everything changed. He began visiting the hospital often, not as a CEO but as a volunteer. He and Lily would sometimes sit on the rooftop garden after shifts, drinking tea from paper cups, watching the sunset. They talked about life, forgiveness, and how small kindnesses could heal the biggest wounds. One evening, as the sky blushed orange and gold, Ethan turned to her and said, "You know, you gave me a second life. I'd like to spend it doing something that matters." Lily smiled. "Then do it. Help people who can't help themselves. That's how you repay life." Months later, news spread that Ethan Cole, the reclusive billionaire, had founded a massive charitable foundation to fund organ transplants for underprivileged patients. At the inauguration ceremony, Lily stood quietly in the back row, not seeking attention, but Ethan called her to the stage. "This woman," he said, voice cracking in front of hundreds, "taught me that life's greatest wealth isn't what you own, but what you give. She didn't just save my life, she changed it." The audience stood and applauded. Lily blushed shyly, tears shining in her eyes. She didn't donate for recognition, but seeing so many lives about to be saved made every scar worth it. Years later, when people asked how they met, Ethan would just smile and say, "In a hospital where one heart learned to beat again because another was brave enough to give."